This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
Wall Street just wrapped up another rocky week, sparking fears a recession is near.
Higher prices are plaguing President Biden.
I'm using every lever available to me to bring down prices for the American people.
A massive heat dome bakes parts of the U.S., while in the West, they are seeing the worst drought in 1,200 years.
It's scary to think that we may not be able to do this because we don't have the water to do it.
There's this assumption that it's always going to be there until it's not there.
These two American fighters may well have been captured by the very Russians that they've been fighting.
We suspect they were knocked out by either the T-72 tank shooting at them or the blast of the mine.
He really had this gnawing at his heart and this big burden on him to go and serve the people however he can. I just want to see him back safely.
I'm Jessica Dean in Washington. Pamela Brown has tonight off, and you are in the CNN newsroom. We begin this hour with your wallet and the beating it's taken in recent days, weeks, and months. The S&P 500 just ended its worst week since March of 2020. Of course, that's when the pandemic hit. And for a second straight day, the Dow closed below 30,000. Americans are feeling the worst inflation now since 1981. Consumer prices shot up by 8.6% for the year ending in May. Record gas prices and skyrocketing airline tickets are battering summer travel plans. And just a few days ago, the Federal Reserve raised the target rate for bank borrowing in hopes of controlling inflation. And that has pushed mortgage rates to their highest since 2008. The average for a 30-year mortgage now sits at 5.78%. For reference, back in December, it was 3.1%. And new data shows even the cost of a backyard cookout is up more than 20% from a year ago. The blog Political Calculations compared data from the Farm Bureau 1 year ago to this year. So here are some of the items they featured. 2 pounds of ground beef costs 11% more than a year ago. 8 hamburger buns up 55%. 2 pounds of chicken breasts up 40%. A half gallon of vanilla ice cream costing 58% more. But the price of a 13-ounce bag of potato chips is down 3%. But here's the total of all of that. Last year, the Farm Bureau's cookout would have cost you $59. This year, Political Calculations says the same or similar items would cost nearly $72. That's almost 21% more. CNN White House correspondent Arlette Saenz is traveling with the president in Delaware this weekend. Arlette, how is the president trying to reassure nervous Americans?
Well, Jess, the president is keenly aware of the economic anxiety that so many Americans are feeling right now as they see these skyrocketing prices on everything from gas to the food that they're purchasing at the grocery store. And over the course of the past few weeks, the president has really leaned into his economic messaging, trying to assure Americans that he is trying to get a handle on inflation. Take a listen to what he had to say on this topic yesterday.
In the United States, I'm using every lever available to me to bring down prices for the American people. And our nations are working together to stabilize global energy markets, including coordinating the largest release from the global global oil reserves in history.
But even as President Biden is saying he's trying to use every lever possible to try to lower some of these prices here in the country, he has also said that there is little he can do to try to change these prices in the short term when it comes to gas and also food. Now, the White House has insisted that they are looking at every option on the table. One option that was being discussed was the possibility of sending out gas rebate cards to Americans to pay for gas as they head to the gas pump each week. But ultimately, a White House official said that that is unlikely to happen because such a program would be difficult to administer, and it would also be difficult to track whether Americans were actually using that money for gas versus other items. Additionally, Biden, when speaking to reporters a bit earlier today here in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, he said he is still in the process of determining whether he will lift those Trump-era tariffs on China. The White House is trying to evaluate whether that would lower prices in any capacity, but if it would, it likely would be just a very short-term issue. But the president at the same time is trying to assure Americans that he does not believe a recession is inevitable, even as some economists are predicting that one is looming. But the president has also said that he understands the weariness that Americans are feeling, especially when it comes to the issues related to the economy, which could prove to be a very real political liability for him heading into the November midterm elections.
Yeah, a lot of anxious Americans out there. Arlette Saenz, thanks so much. And record gas prices aren't the only sticker shock for American drivers. If you are shopping for a car, you're facing a perfect storm of factors that are pushing prices up. CNN's Camille Bernal is in Los Angeles with a closer look at this. And the average monthly car payment has just hit a record $712 a month. What are the factors behind this?
Well, Jessica, supply is low and demand is high, and that goes for affordable vehicles, luxury vehicles, and really anything in between. Right now, the average nationally for a new car is at $47,000. If you're going to buy a used car, then you're going to have at least $28,000. That's the average, and experts say they don't expect those numbers to go down. So those that I talked to told me, look, even if you're a good negotiator, you're likely not going to get a discount.
This here is the Wrangler four-wheel drive.
This is Roland Pahud's new Jeep. It was a necessity, he says, and a quick decision.
I had another car with a lot of mileage and I needed a bigger one.
The Jeep was about $50,000, leaving his monthly payment at about $800, higher than the most recent Kelley Blue Book monthly payment average at $712.
This is a new record for that monthly payment. This is a new record. And then the new car prices are actually near records.
In the last year, new car prices have gone up 12.6%, used cars up 16.1%, food 10.1%, and gas up 48.7%. But gas prices not necessarily deterring potential buyers at this Southern California car dealership.
Demand is high, supply is still low, and we're still in chip shortage era.
This, paired with the high interest rates, making it difficult for buyers.
We don't see prices decreasing much, and even if they do, just keep in mind that interest rates are rising. So the cost of borrowing money is going up, so that just means you're still going to be paying as much or nearly as much as you were, even if those prices go down.
Car, home, and student loans all higher. Interest rates on a 30-year fixed mortgage have jumped from 2.93 to 5.78% in the last year.
This is how it looks.
Pahud wishes his interest would have been lower, but says it was his need and want that motivated his new car purchase. And a lot of people are turning to electric vehicles. Prices for those are also higher. And even though it is cheaper to charge a car, electricity is up by 12% in comparison to last year. Jessica.
All right, Camille Bernal in Los Angeles for us. Thanks so much. And low gas prices in 2020, plus the exploding pandemic, made many Americans restless and hungry for new adventures. And so some of them hit the road, living essentially in a home on wheels and embracing a nomadic lifestyle that's come to be known as van life. But these people are now facing a new reality. Hundreds of dollars to fuel up their van, their bus, their RVs. Alex and Frankie McCullough are van lifers. They're living on the road and sharing their experiences and expertise on YouTube and social media. Great to see both of you from inside of your van, it looks like there. Let's first share a clip from your YouTube channel. Let's take a look.
Fuel is one of the most expensive parts of van life. So with the prices rising, is van life over?
Pros and cons of coming to the cheapest gas station in town.
We're sharing our tips to save money and asking fellow van lifers, what are you gonna do now that the price of gas is so high?
It's a good question. Alex, first off, what advice are you sharing with fellow or prospective van lifers?
So definitely one of the most important things to consider if you're just buying a van is how many miles per gallon you get. If you're looking at getting a giant 30-foot school bus, you're really going to feel it at the pumps. But if you pick something a little bit smaller, a little bit sportier, still home size, you'll definitely make out better at the pumps.
Sure. And Frankie, tell me a little bit about how the record high gas prices have impacted you all's life.
So I think that we travel just a little bit slower now. We try to stay at places and really just make sure that we know exactly where we're going to go on our route. That way we could calculate exactly how much money we need for fuel.
Yeah, and it really has. I mean, you know, if you started in 2020, the gas prices, Camila Bernal just going over some 40% higher, that has to be such an impact, such a change for you guys.
Yeah, when we first left, we were paying about $2 and change per gallon. And now, you know, we were just traveling in California where prices were almost at $7. It definitely hurts. It's funny because we'll go back and watch some of our old videos where we were complaining about prices over $3, and now we're jumping for joy if we see that.
Right, a lot of perspective there. Frankie, by most accounts, the gas prices are likely to go higher. Do you think that's going to shrink the number of people choosing to live the van life?
I don't think it's going to shrink the number, and the reason why that is because when you get into van life or into this lifestyle, we are saving a lot of money on rent. So we are not paying the amount of money that a normal person would pay for rent, which then that could be your budget for fuel.
Yeah. And do you think it's still going to be a lifestyle 20, 30 years from now, even 5 or 10 years from now? Or do you think this was kind of a reaction to this extraordinary moment in time?
Well, I think it was a lifestyle before COVID hit. We were definitely already on the road when that happened. And everybody that we've talked to loves the lifestyle. Obviously, there's going to be people that come into it and out of it as a season in their lives. But I think it's definitely something here to stay, especially with the connectivity we have now with the internet and the introduction of programs like Starlink, where you can get internet anywhere. You could literally work a full-time corporate job from a van in the middle of a forest. It really opens up so many doors.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you about. I think a lot of people are probably watching and thinking, wow, that could be a great adventure, but what do you do for money? How do you keep a job? I know, Alex, on your website, you and Frankie offer expertise consultations for $100, so you're able to make some money that way. How are people doing this and also making sure that they have the money to live?
Well, if you actually go through our podcast as well, you could hear all different types of examples of jobs on the road. There are traveling nurses. There are people who do content creation like ourselves. We work with sponsorships and brand deals while we're on the road, which makes it to where we could have a very affordable lifestyle and be able to put money in the bank as well.
But we know people who are teachers on the road. They do graphic design, any kind of job that you can do digitally. We know people who are accountants and website builders, and literally from A to Z, we see the gamut of jobs on the road. And like Frankie said before, the cost of living, once you're actually in the vehicle, I know you were just talking about how the prices of vehicles have skyrocketed. So once you're actually in the van, your life on the road is very inexpensive.
And so what would you two both say was the one thing you wish you'd known before you hit the road?
Well, one thing I wish I knew was the fact that life could be so inexpensive and not to be scared. There's a lot of people out here in the world that are actually super friendly, and we have been prone to finding those people, and we're so thankful for everybody who's helped us along our journey.
Yeah, and we're just glad that we made the leap when we did, because since we've gotten on the road, we've met so many amazing people. And I think there are so many resources out there now. When we first got on the road, it was hard to find, you know, how-tos and guides about how to live the lifestyle. But now there's literally books A to Z on how to do it. So we're so glad that there's so much out there for anybody who's interested in the lifestyle.
Yeah, and you guys are leading the way. Alex and Frankie McCullough, thanks so much for joining us, and safe travels.
Thank you so much.
And you're in the CNN newsroom. Coming up, the CDC recommending COVID-19 shots for children as young as 6 months. That's clearing the way for vaccinations to start very soon. Also ahead, a fallen firefighter hailed a hero after a building collapses in Philadelphia. And the January 6th committee setting its sights on the pressure campaign to overturn Biden's election win. We'll be right back.
The ever-changing weather around the world. ever-diverse terrain and roads across the world. With Kumho Tire that has conquered all. There is no road you cannot go. Go with Kumho. Kumho Tire.
Monday, let's lift every voice. A CNN concert event. The Roots, Khalid, Jhené Aiko, Earth, Wind & Fire, Yolanda Adams, and for the first time ever, an all-black symphony orchestra takes the stage at the Hollywood Bowl, and so much more. Juneteenth, a global celebration for freedom. Live from the Hollywood Bowl, only on CNN.
So many questions about what is the federal government doing. Do you get the anger that is out here?
How concerned are you about the front line?
You don't believe that there's a racial divide here?
Looking back, as president, did you tell the story of race in America enough, do you think?
All the places I've been and all the things I've seen, all the people I've talked to, I carry with me. They're a part of what I do right here, holding the powerful accountable, keeping them honest.
AC 360, Tuesday through Saturday only on CNN.
We share this place, we all belong.
A Philadelphia firefighter was killed overnight after a building collapsed. That happened just after a fire in the building was put out. Officials say 4 other firefighters and a city worker were rescued from that rubble. The fire commissioner saying the firefighter who died had been with the department for 27 years.
People are just starting to decompress because we just finished up pulling our brother out of this place. And our brothers out of this place. And, you know, it's going to be a rough few weeks coming up.
The cause of the building collapse remains under investigation. And turning now to the major development in the fight against COVID-19. CDC Director Dr. Rochelle Walensky has signed off on both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines for children under the age of 5. CNN's Miguel Marquez has the latest on that.
Jessica, this decision by the CDC advisory panel gets us sort of one step closer to helping protect all Americans and maybe getting closer to smothering out this pandemic. This will cover nearly 20 million Americans, the youngest, most vulnerable Americans, those under 5. The CDC advisory panel met for several hours. They had a presentation, then they took about an hour and a half of questions and statements. A couple of the things that they centered on were that vaccinations are effective against severe illness in children. That's something that we've seen in other cohorts as well. That vaccination is better than previous infections. Some parents saying, oh, my child was previously infected, I think that they'll be fine. They found that because of the way the virus has changed with the various variants, and that there may be more variants to come, that getting vaccinated is much more effective than relying on previous infection. That the side effects are there, just like they were for me or for you or for whoever got vaccinated, but they are manageable. And then they discussed a lot about the practicality of both delivering and distributing and administering these vaccines to these young people, because it is a different dose, it's a different way of doing it. These are 2 separate vaccines that they approved today, Moderna and Pfizer, with 2 different regimes. The Moderna is a 2-shot regimen given over several weeks, and the Pfizer is 3 shots also given over several weeks. Many states have already ordered these shots up. Many of these doses are already being delivered, and cities like New York, they expect to start putting them into young arms next week. Back to you.
All right, Miguel Marquez for us. Thanks so much for that update. Georgia's Secretary of State is scheduled to appear before the January 6th committee on Tuesday. Coming up, a look ahead with CNN senior legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara. That's next.
I'm Delia Gallagher in Rome, and this is CNN.
Today, shocking disclosures from January 6th. What's next? Committee member Adam Schiff, plus Republican Fred Upton. And can the U.S. get gas prices under control? Dana asks Secretary Jennifer Granholm. State of the Union. Today.
My name's Jim Brailsford, and I lead the Industry and Solutions Marketing team for Kinaxis. It's absolutely key that businesses incorporate sustainability into their business models. Firstly, you have got the corporate objective and being a good global citizen. You've also got the need to be reflecting that to your public, to your consumers, that show that you are actually being environmentally conscious. And also, as supply chains are more mature and are considering all of these things in a holistic way, it develops a sort of a steadiness to their operation. Supply chain sustainability will become a qualifier. It will not necessarily be the winner, but it will become a qualifier, enabling you to participate in the competition.
When you travel the world, make sure the world travels with you. Check in, log on, and get connected with all of the latest developments at your fingertips. CNN Partner Hotels. Connected to your world.
Our mission here at CNN and journalists, the news comes first. That's when your heart beats a little bit faster. More breaking news that we are following right now. You really work as hard as you can getting the facts. We're learning more about an alleged plot. It is critically important. To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
The January 6th committee is gearing up for more public hearings in the week ahead. Among those scheduled to testify, Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. Then President Trump pressured him, you'll remember, to, quote, find enough votes to win the 2020 election. But Trump's plan went beyond Georgia. We're now learning that Arizona's Republican House Speaker will also testify about the pressure campaign. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is wasting no time lashing out at the panel. He called the committee, quote, con artists as it prepares for a fourth hearing. CNN's Jessica Schneider has more.
I never called Mike Pence a wimp. I never called him a wimp. Mike Pence had a chance to be great. He had a chance to be, frankly, historic. But just like Bill Barr and the rest of these weak people, Mike, and I say it sadly because I like him, but Mike did not have the courage to act.
Former President Trump using his platform at a conservative political conference to deny the evidence against him and blast the January 6th committee.
They're con people. They're con artists.
Trump's attacks come as the committee is gearing up for several more hearings. CNN has learned Georgia's Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, will be at Tuesday's hearing with his deputy.
All I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have.
They'll testify about Trump's efforts to pressure them to change the election results.
Aye.
The committee also wants to talk to Ginny Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, about her communications with Trump attorney John Eastman. Eastman devised the scheme to pressure then Vice President Mike Pence to block the certification of Biden's 2020 electoral win.
The teller is verified, appears to be regular, in form, and authentic.
Something Pence ultimately refused to do.
We have sent Ms. Thomas a letter asking us to come and talk to the committee. We look forward to her coming.
You need to follow. Ginny Thomas issued a short response to the committee via the conservative publication Daily Caller, saying she can't wait to clear up misconceptions. I look forward to talking to them. Eastman denying he ever discussed election litigation that might come before the Supreme Court with Ginny Thomas or with Justice Clarence Thomas. Eastman writing, "We have never engaged in such discussions, would not engage in such discussions, and did not do so in December 2020 or any time else." While the committee is requesting cooperation from outstanding witnesses, it has so far refused to share full transcripts of all of its interviews with the Justice Department. But the committee says it will not be an obstacle to Justice Department prosecutions.
We are not going to stop what we're doing to share the information that we've gotten so far with the Department of Justice. We have to do our work.
CNN has learned the panel is running into problems securing witnesses for an upcoming hearing about Trump's efforts to pressure the Justice Department to support and promote his false election fraud claims. While Jeffrey Rosen and Richard Donoghue, the top two officials at DOJ in the final weeks of the Trump administration, are expected to appear, the committee is so far striking out with Pat Cipollone. Cipollone is the former White House lawyer credited with talking some sense into Trump by threatening to resign. Sources say Cipollone is not expected to join the hearing in person, despite already talking to the committee privately. And the New York Times is also reporting that the committee could start sharing transcripts of those witness interviews with the Justice Department as soon as next month. Jessica Schneider, CNN, Washington.
All right, Jessica, thank you. And former U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara is joining me now. Preet, it's lovely to see you. Thanks for being with us on a Saturday night. We know this next hearing is going to include the tape of former President Trump pressuring Brad Raffensperger in Georgia. What else are you going to be listening for on Tuesday?
Well, I think it's a very important piece of testimony that we're going to get from that Secretary of State from Georgia. We've all heard the tape. It's been around for a long time. What we don't have is testimony from him, at least that I'm aware of, talking about other communications. Were there other people at the White House? Were there subsequent communications done through intermediaries or directly from Donald Trump and others? What kind of action did he take? What was his state of mind when he had that conversation with Donald Trump? And so all the details are not filled in yet. And so I think it'll be pretty important.
And we know that the committee said this week that, quote, it won't be an obstacle for the Department of Justice prosecutions surrounding the events of January 6th. And the Justice Department had raised some concerns the committee was not sharing those transcripts with them. There's a lot of talk about this relationship between the DOJ, what they're trying to do with this investigation, and what the committee's trying to do. What do you make of their relationship?
Well, it's hard to tell. The important thing to remember as a foundational matter is that the Justice Department has a different role and a different goal from what the committee role is. They're in different branches of government. The committee is trying to be transparent and try to make a record of what happened with the final purpose of issuing a report that lays out in detail all the events that led up to January 6th and its aftermath and what proposals would be necessary for Congress to prevent that from ever happening again. And the Justice Department is not issuing a report. If it plays in this area, on this field, its purpose is to find out who, if anyone, other than the people who have already been arrested and charged and prosecuted, is criminally liable for the events of January 6th. So there's a lot of overlap, even though they have different missions and different goals. And the overlap is in evidence gathering. The Justice Department, according to some, has been too late to the game in figuring out who it wants to interview. At the same time, there are people at the Justice Department who are criticizing the committee, as you mentioned, for not turning over those transcripts. I think both sides are trying to get something. The committee obviously has been disappointed that only 2 of the 4 people recommended for contempt of Congress charges were actually charged by the Justice Department. I ultimately think it's not a big deal. It's not really a fight. The committee has made clear that it wants to be transparent and wants to release these transcripts not just to the Justice Department, but to the general public. The question will be what the timing is and how quickly it can be resolved, but I don't think it's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And amid all of this, the former president is still out there repeating the same lies that the committee is now detailing and talking people through. Let's listen to him yesterday, once again going after former Vice President Mike Pence.
I never called Mike Pence a wimp. I never called him a wimp. Mike Pence had a chance to be great. He had a chance to be, frankly, historic. But just like Bill Barr and the rest of these weak people, Mike, and I say it sadly because I like him, but Mike did not have the courage to act.
And of course, we now know that the vice president's life was in danger. What is your reaction to former President Trump's comments there?
My reaction is dismissive, as is about a lot of things that Donald Trump says and has said. Number one, Donald Trump is a proven liar. Number two, whether or not he called him a wimp, he did call him weak, even in that soundbite. Said he didn't have courage, and there is some testimony forthcoming, I believe, that he called Mike Pence something that I can't repeat on television, a word much worse than a wimp. What's important is not what he called him. What's important is the pressure he put to bear on the Vice President of the United States, and how even when he saw the violence taking place and he understood that Mike Pence's life was potentially in danger and people were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and there was a gallows constructed outside, he didn't seem to be upset about it. And the testimony, I believe, is that he said maybe the people have a point. So I don't really understand the significance of whether he called him a wimp or not. He called him worse, and he did much worse.
Mm. And the committee has also released this surveillance video of a man who marched on the Capitol and threatened Democratic lawmakers, showing he was on a tour with GOP Congressman Barry Loudermilk of Georgia the day before the riots. Loudermilk and the Capitol Police Chief say the tour was innocent, but Loudermilk had also previously said it never happened in the first place. What's your take on that?
I think that the representative should come and make the case clear. He should give testimony. He should explain what his prior statements were about, why they changed, and and just answer forthrightly all the questions. The funny thing about all these people who don't want to testify, and we should mention again that most people are agreeing to testify, but the ones who aren't claim in television sound bites and at other podiums that are outside of the purview of the committee that they did nothing wrong and everything was above board and everything was clean. If that's so, then I don't understand the fear in coming before the committee and under oath in front of the microphone explaining exactly what happened, and the American people can decide if the person is telling the truth and being forthcoming or not.
All right, well, we will hear more from the committee in the next few days during their next hearing. Preet Bharara, thanks so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, primary season rolls on, and more Republicans are finding out that the road can get rockier if they push back on former President Donald Trump. Harry Inton is running the numbers for us. That's next.
We're here at the home of one of the FSB team. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
What do you want the world to know?
People are so exhausted. Just going to help her carry this bag.
Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy. I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you. Now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their stories.
Three Strands Global Foundation is a nonprofit that has been combating human trafficking for the last 12 years, focused in on three areas: prevention education, prevention through employment, and prevention through engagement. So we have a few initiatives that directly look at the root causes. One is prevention education, so that teachers can identify exploitation and trafficking, as well as be trauma-informed, and students in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade can be educated. When the pandemic hit, a prevention education program, Protect, we had to do a pivot. The kids no longer were in classrooms. Teachers were no longer in classrooms teaching. They had to make adjustments to be able to actually reach the kids online, which meant that they were looking in a different way with different eyes at their students as their students were learning this curriculum. We had to make sure that teachers still could identify any exploitation or abuse that was happening. Our second program is called the Employ Plus Empower program, and this is our prevention through employment. We want to make sure that survivors aren't re-exploited and that they have a sustainable job, that they are financially secure, and that they can thrive. Survivor voices are incredibly important in this movement, and I believe strongly that when we listen to survivors, we actually will create prevention programs and initiatives that do exactly what we need to do to prevent this crime.
Flightrex works with drones, which are basically robots. You don't have to pay salaries to robots. And that way we can take the cost, make it an order of magnitude more affordable than using humans for deliveries, especially in the suburbs where the population density is too low to optimize for multiple deliveries in the same run. We can basically offer a free delivery to our customers and charge a very small amount from the different restaurant chains and retailers. So it's basically a win-win situation for everybody, getting you your meal hotter, faster, and in a more affordable way. And we're already servicing almost 10,000 families in North Carolina, making deliveries 7 days a week, every day, to people's backyards during lunch, dinner. We send Tylenol in the afternoons, diapers in the evening, just servicing whatever people need in their homes.
Heard it all before?
But have you heard it like this?
The ultimate disruptor looks set to shake up our world. We really can't ignore the impact that this has. What can we do that explores a fresh angle? So let's untangle the players and political forces. The truth is a lot more complex. What's really going on?
Fast-paced news, in-depth reports, and fact checks from the perspective of The Global Brief with Bianca Nobilo. Weeknights on CNN.
There's more proof this weekend that going against former President Donald Trump can be very bad for some Republican politicians. CNN's senior data reporter Harry Enton joins us now to run the numbers. Hi, Harry. Great to have you with us. Tell us about this historic loss this week.
Yeah, so Tom Rice, who voted to impeach Donald Trump, was running for re-election in the Republican primary down in South Carolina's 7th congressional district. And he only got 24.7% of the vote. And I was, on New Day with John Berman, I said, this is like really rare, but I wasn't quite sure how rare it actually was. And then I went back and I looked at this. And it turns out that 24.7% of the vote that Tom Rice got was the worst House incumbent primary performance this entire century, or at least appears to be. It might even go back to the 20th century, but the fact is it's much harder to calculate the numbers from back then. But I think this just gives you an indication of what a rough road politicians face within the Republican Party when they go against Trump, especially on impeachment, because you just never see incumbents doing this bad. I think the closest to this was a performance by William Jefferson down in Louisiana back in 2008, where he got a little bit more than 25% of the vote, and he was basically facing a potential felony conviction. So when you get 24.7% of the vote, you've done something seriously wrong as far as the voters are concerned.
In the eyes of the voters, right? And let's go to Alabama now, where Trump endorsed one candidate, then switched his endorsement to another. What's the state of play there?
Yeah, so he initially endorsed Mo Brooks, and then essentially he saw Mo Brooks doing bad in the polls, and he's like, you know what, I'm going to pull out, and I'm going to give some bizarro reason why I'm no longer endorsing Mo Brooks that nobody really buys. And then they had the actual primary, and Mo Brooks actually advanced in that primary to the runoff against Katie Britt. And then all of a sudden, Katie Britt was doing fairly well in the polls, so he said, you know what, I want to be with the winner, so I'm going to endorse Katie Britt. And what we can see here is these are essentially the betting odds, the chance of winning. Before Trump endorsed Britt, Britt was the clear favorite. She had an 85% chance of winning according to the betting markets. After Trump endorsed Britt, you can see it on your screen right now. Katie Britt has a 98% chance of winning, just a 2% chance for Mo Brooks, which, 2% things happen, but they don't happen very frequently. So I think Donald Trump is going to get a win this week. Sort of. I mean, depending on how you define win, with Katie Britt probably winning. But I just think this kind of gets to the psychological state of Donald Trump when it comes to endorsing candidates. He goes away from candidates when they're losing, goes towards them when they're winning. So I'm not sure the win-loss record necessarily tells the state of anything other than Donald Trump wanting to be a winner, and he wants to jump on the train with Katie Britt. And I think he will get a win here. But I just think the whole thing is truthfully hilarious when it comes to Donald Trump's endorsements.
And following the numbers there. And of course, Congresswoman Liz Cheney, another Republican who not only voted to impeach Donald Trump, she's of course one of the leaders on the January 6th committee. How is she doing in her home state of Wyoming, a very, very conservative state?
It is a very conservative state. I mean, Republican performances in Wyoming, my favorite thing is I always run the numbers in a place like West Virginia, and I go, wait a minute, there's a more Republican state than West Virginia? Yeah, it's Wyoming. And what we see here is essentially, before Liz Cheney voted to impeach Donald Trump, she was fairly popular, right? You can see that in her disapproval rating in Wyoming. It was 26%. That's fairly low. That's pretty good for a politician, especially statewide in Wyoming, because they only have one congressional district. But then after voting to impeach Donald Trump, look at her disapproval rating now, 72%. It went up by 46 points. Again, this just kind of jives with what we saw down in South Carolina's 7th district this week. When you went to go impeach Donald Trump as a Republican, Republicans do not like that. They hate that. And so when you see an incumbent all of a sudden see their disapproval rating jump by 46 points, you know they've done something horribly wrong in the minds of the voters. And I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest, there is a less popular incumbent in Congress than Liz Cheney is at this particular point. And it all goes back to the fact that she voted to impeach Donald Trump, and the Republicans in the very Republican state of Wyoming don't like that.
Yeah, those numbers certainly show that the former president still has a very strong hold in the Republican Party, especially in primaries. Harry Enten, thanks so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure to see you. I always learn something. And be sure to check out Harry's podcast, Margins of Error. It's on your favorite podcast app. You can also go to cnn.com/audio. And you, of course, are in the CNN newsroom. Some of the world's best golfers are at the U.S. Open this weekend, but a growing split inside the sport could change golf forever. Our Don Riddell is at the U.S. Open outside Boston with more just ahead.
Africa Avant-Garde in association with Access Bank. More than banking.
We need to start developing more writers. As a producer, I'm always on the lookout for new voices, new writers, because those are the foundations of good storytelling.
The best advice I've ever received is to never stop writing, because once you start practicing the thing that you want to get good at, you start having all those inflicting thoughts of, am I good enough?
To find your voice as a filmmaker or to tell stories that have deep impact, they have to be stories that affect you yourself. If it doesn't affect you, you can't translate that into a story. Whatever you write will be superficial. So first, if you're going to tell a story that is honest, it has to be honest to you first.
Monday, lift every voice. Khalid, Shaka Khan, Yolanda Adams, Neo, Mickey Guyton, Earth, Wind & Fire, and so much more. Juneteenth, a global celebration for freedom. Live from the Hollywood Bowl, only on CNN.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. Real news that shapes our world. Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. It all starts here. And that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
Potato custodians are basically the guardians of the traditional knowledge, and they're also the guardians of the diversity itself.
There are about 4,000 varieties of native potato in the world, and most of them are grown in the Andes, while only a handful are available in supermarkets around the world.
Between the two of us, we have been growing these seeds for 20 years, preserving them since the day of our wedding. My mother taught me. Now I want to teach my daughters.
It's a laboratory that's not managed by scientists, but it's a laboratory that is basically more than 10,000 years of evolution in the hands of farmers.
I can't let them be forgotten, because all the flavors, I know now how to grow them, and in that way I can keep the varieties alive.
Advancement, adaptation, new Marketplace Middle East.
From digital banking to biometric payments, we take a look at innovation and technology in the future of finance.
Marketplace Middle East, tonight on CNN. On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, Could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future. Are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, Saturday on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
I'm Hadas Gold in Jerusalem, and this is CNN.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
The third round of the U.S. Open is winding down tonight in Massachusetts, but overshadowing the action on the course is the star we know won't win, Phil Mickelson. CNN's Don Riddell is joining me now from Brookline. Don, why isn't Mickelson competing this weekend?
Well, he was competing, and he's not competing this weekend, Jessica, because he wasn't good enough to make the cut. This has been a monumentally important week for Phil Mickelson. You may remember he took 4 months off golf. It was kind of a self-imposed sabbatical following his ill-advised and frankly very insensitive comments that he made about the Saudis and the breakaway golf series that they are funding with a blank check. And he has since decided that he is going to go with that tour, which is highly controversial for so many reasons. It has fractured the world of professional golf. He and many others have subsequently left to go and try and set up a new thing. This was the first time that we'd seen the breakaway golfers and those who are staying with the PGA Tour competing in the same field. I have to say that most of those rebel golfers failed to make the cut, along with Mickelson. And you can see, I guess, why he is attracted to this new series, because there's only 54 holes, there's no cut, and it's guaranteed prize money. But this, I think, was the week that Mickelson realized there was no going back. The fans still love him, that is clear, but he faced a very, very hostile press on Monday, and he did seem very uncomfortable in that environment.
And once play got underway today, would you say his absence was noticed, or everyone just kind of pushed ahead?
Yeah, I don't think anybody really noticed, to be honest. I mean, he is hugely popular despite everything, as I said, but the fans here want to see great golf, and Mickelson right now is not a great golfer. This, some of our viewers may know, Brookline, the country club here, is one of the most historic golf courses in the country. It staged some incredible drama before. This is where Francis Ouimet won as an amateur in 1913. It's where the American Ryder Cup team came back from 4 points back to win against the Europeans in 1999. And today, the conditions have been brutal, really, really high winds. It's dried out the fairways and the greens. It's made competition very tough, and we've seen some of the world's best golfers struggling. The guy right now that is setting the pace is an amazing story. 25-year-old Will Zalatoris from Dallas, on a day where many of the golfers would just have been happy to maintain their position on the leaderboard. He's actually made serious progress. He was 3 under for the day, 4 under for the tournament. He's the co-leader at the moment. This is a guy, despite his young age, who has contended in so many major tournaments recently, and he's hoping that all that experience can finally push him over the line tomorrow. Certainly, he's played very well today and is in a fantastic position going into the final round tomorrow, Jessica.
All right, a lot of golf fans keeping their eyes out. Don Riddell, thanks so much. From one coast to the other, a massive heat dome is making parts of the country simply feel like an oven, and it's happening while some Americans endure the worst drought conditions in 1,200 years. Sunday on CNN, Sunday on CNN, you can join some of the biggest stars as they lift their voices for Juneteenth, a global celebration for freedom. You can see it live tomorrow night at 8, only on CNN.
Africa Avant-Garde in association with Access Bank. More than banking.
We need to start developing more writers. As a producer,